Yeah.
Trying to get the recorder to come on. I got this thing on.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's March 6th, a little after 3. It's actually 3 o'clock. I'll call the Kent County Police Accountability Review Board meeting to order. Remind everybody about the confidential matters that we have, discussing personnel. We don't discuss it outside the board. And I'm going to pass this over to Pete for a staff report.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Pete Lannon, Office of Emergency Services. Today I have the pleasure of formally introducing Frank McGarvey, who is starting today as a Police Accountability Officer Consultant for Kent County and your Police Accountability Board. So everybody, I know we've met informally. This is Frank. I'm going to give you a little background, and I made sure I had a script so I didn't go off script. And Frank didn't write this, by the way. But Frank's a retired federal law enforcement agent officer with more than 38 years, working both the Land Security Investigation Field Office in Baltimore and Cambridge, as well as U.S. Customs Service District Offices in Miami, Florida, and Baltimore. Frank's last post, and one where he gained great knowledge of public safety and policing on the Eastern Shore, was directing all Homeland Security investigations, activities, and agency programs within the 8 counties of Maryland's Eastern Shore, and leading and managing the investigative activities of 7 special agents, 3 full-time task force operators, and numerous part-time task force operators. As the police accountability consultant for Kent County, Frank will pick up where his predecessor left off, and I've kind of been holding that place, with setting up and finalizing the infrastructure and moving forward with the Police Accountability Board, the Administrative Charging Committee, and the trial boards. Frank is going to ensure that all activities of the Kent County Police Accountability Board, Administrative Charging Committee, and trial boards are formed and operate in a legal and efficient manner. Frank, as the accountability officer, will be responsible for managing the daily operations of PAB, ACC, and trial boards, which includes the development of policy and planning and implementation of consistent business practices as well as legal practices among the 3 entities. Finally, Frank's been tasked to build and maintain effective relationships with me as the Commissioner's liaison, board members, committee members, public safety partners, community groups, and miscellaneous interested parties. Luckily, I believe based on his 10 years as federal employee, investigator, and supervisor, he definitely has the ability to manage multiple projects effectively. And he'll also be able to prepare accurate reports, keep detailed records, and retain correspondence as a whole. Please welcome Frank as your new accountability officer, and I'll pass the floor and gavel to Frank with any comments or anything.
So thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm very excited to be in this position as a challenge. Been in the position since about 9 o'clock this morning, so
You're still here.
Learning curve. I'm going to try and get to it as quickly as we can, and if there's anything I can do or you think I should do, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me know, and we'll get it taken care of.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
PAB follows Robert Rules of Order and PAB Rules of Procedures of the Maryland Open Meetings Act. Everybody have a copy of the last month's minutes?
Yeah.
Need a motion to accept them?
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Old business. So I had discussed in our last meeting about doing like a mock hearing or break into work groups. And I don't think we can do that because of the Open Meetings Act. we're going to discuss under some new business, some things that might help this out, any questions we might have as to where the complaints go, how they're routed, how they come in, and how we're going to disseminate them. So unless anybody has any other suggestions on that, I thought it was a good idea, we just can't make it work out under the Opens Meeting Act, because it would have to be out there, recorded, et cetera. Moving on to new business. Everybody get the 2023 gift disclosure form?
Barry, if I could suggest,
Yes.
if you take a look at the gift disclosure, all you have to do is determine whether you received the gift as a member of Police Accountability Board or Administrative Charging Committee, or if not. And if you haven't, I'd appreciate if you could check that space and sign it and then get it back to me, and that way we can get it back to the commissioners in a timely fashion. And if anybody did get a gift, I'd be interested in knowing now.
And moving on, in your package, you also had a Citizen Trial Board member. You have a copy of it?
Looking for the gift, memo, I don't see. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
We'll let you catch up.
Hey, Barry, on the matter of the Citizen Trial Board member, I can offer some guidance and thoughts on that procedurally going forward.
Okay.
You finished
Oh,
with
yeah,
this.
thank you.
Frank? Barry, just let me know when you're ready to move forward.
Okay.
Is it possible to get a copy? Anything I sign, I'd like to have a.
Sure, I'll get a copy.
Okay.
All right, everybody has the Citizen Trial Board resume. And I'll pass this over to Pete.
Okay, real quickly, the Citizen Trial Board member, it's a position that's posted on the Kent County Police Accountability Board webpage. Actually has a separate page. I'm kind of give you a little bit of a background. And it says, as you all should know, the trial board adjudicates matters for which a police officer or deputy is subject to discipline. The trial board meets when the decision of a police chief or sheriff is appealed by an officer. As required by law, the trial board includes 3 members, an active retired or retired administrative law judge or retired district or circuit court judge appointed by the county executive. A civilian who is not a member of an administrative charging committee appointed by the Police Accountability Board, that's why we're here today talking about this, and a police officer of equal rank to the accused appointed by the police chief of police that employs the officer subject to the complaint. So trial board has 3 people. It has the judge, a civilian, and a police officer or deputy at the same rank. And a separate trial board will be convened for each incident and only when requested by the officer. To give you a little history of why we're here today. To date, even though the position has been advertised since my arrival in May, we've actually only have had one person show any interest and apply. And that candidate is here for your consideration today. We passed out the candidate's resume for your review. The personal identifying information has purposely been removed so that it allows us to discuss the matter appropriately. After your review and any non-identity specific questions or discussion, it would be appropriate, if desired, for a motion on the floor to nominate the candidate second and approve. I can tell you the reason why we're doing it this way is that would allow the candidate to be vetted prior to having their appointment fully take charge, just as each and every one of you sitting at this table were vetted. That way we have an idea, or we know that going into it there's no inherent possibility there could be a conflict of interest. I can tell you that if all comes back with no derogatory information, Frank would be able to present that member at the very next Police Accountability Board meeting. With that being said, if you deem it appropriate, if there are no questions, first of all, does anybody have any questions about the civilian person ahead of you that's presented to you? You have their resume, you have their qualifications. And again, it was very specific to make sure it wasn't an active police officer and or someone who's on the administrative charging committee. Those are the only parameters that come up. It was kind of our feeling that there should be some type of secondary vetting or criminal investigation check just to make sure that everything is on the up and up.
I have a question. In the secondary vetting, will questions be asked as to whether this individual has had any negative interaction with law enforcement? In other words, that a person that will be coming with a proverbial chip on.
So the way it's worded is when their background is investigated or vetted, we're making sure there's no disqualifying or derogatory information revealed, and that would be exactly what you're talking about. That's a good question, though. Any other questions?
I make a motion that we accept this person that has applied for the civilian trial board as a member. Any second?
Am I doing first or second? I didn't.
First, second.
First, I recommend.
Okay.
Any discussion?
As a non-reporting member, I want to make sure that you understand that if any disqualifying or derogatory information is revealed, this motion is non-existent.
Understood.
Any other discussion?
I just had a question. There's nothing on here about him doing anything with security
Or her,
of the, do what?
him or her.
That's right, we don't know.
All right, that's.
Yeah, there's
that's
no law enforcement background.
it. Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Staying under new business, so I was contacted via email by the chief of Chestertown PD, advising me of a internal administrative complaint that they have. It's nothing that meets the criteria for the ACC or the PAB. It's just an internal, but in transparency, he wanted to let me know about it. And I think what we need to do is have an avenue or a way to discuss, or I don't want anybody to come back and say, well, I heard about this complaint, you know? And when it really wasn't a true complaint that would come before us, if that makes sense.
I can kind of add something, Barry, and it was in discussions real briefly with Frank this morning. One of the things, if you remember, you were handed this flow chart. If you notice the way that the law is written, even beyond what the flow chart says, the Police Accountability Board might never come in contact with any complaint whatsoever. The Administrative Charging Committee would. And the issue is that the Administrative Charging Committee is a committee of the board. So what we need to do before the next meeting, and this can be offline, is discuss a process whereby the notifications are made legally, but also from an informational standpoint. Kent County is a small community. We all know that there could have been a complaint made, and all of a sudden you're sitting here as a member saying, I knew nothing about it. It's very possible a complaint could be made and it was unfounded, it was false. But I think we need to figure out a mechanism so that members of this board confidentially know what's going on, don't have to know any of the logistics, any of the identifiable, other than what Barry just said. Chief Dixon came to him. I believe there was a similar incident in the past where Sheriff Hickman notified, hey, we have this. Legally, he doesn't have to until it gets all the way to the very end, investigated, and then he hands it to the chair of the Administrative Charging Committee and says, here, you have 30 days to make a determination. We're trying to tweak that process so it fits our logistics and our operational tempo. Does everybody understand what we're kind of talking about? Does anybody have an issue with that? I know it's different here because we all sit here and know when a complaint is made and when it's not. I want this board to know what's going on from a fully transparent manner, and also decide how the public is going to know what's going on as well. It's not in the law, it's not in interpretation, it's not in a process flow chart. That's why we see the need to kind of finalize it. And it'll be brought back before this board before any implementation.
I deal with that at my agency since I'm quasi-public safety. And it is difficult sometimes, not that I've had that many, but stuff gets out on the street and people come right up to you in public. They say, Warden, such and such thing on Lamont. Can't comment. Nothing to say about it. Difficult sometimes when the story gets so blown out or whatever, but you still have to maintain that silence. And even when it's over with, it's a personnel matter, and it doesn't go beyond that.
100%, but I think what I personally, and what Barry and I talked about, and Frank this morning, and I've had discussions with everybody sitting at the table or in the room, and there's nothing worse than somebody saying, hey, did you know about, and you say, oh yeah, sure, and you're thinking in the back of your mind, I have no idea what they're talking about. At least this way, this board will know what's going on, and it might be nothing that comes to them, but you have the confidence of knowing that you're getting all the information, nothing's churning beneath the surface or behind a closed door.
And I will say too, just by the police chief there of Chestertown reaching out to me by email, telling me about what, I thought that was a nice step forward with, transparency. Although, and he knew it was nothing that we were going to be involved in, but he just kept us in the loop. But I'm thinking going forward, myself and maybe Shelley will get with you, Frank, and we'll kind of, and so we'll get this kind of, get some things in place, so when we come back at the next meeting, we can discuss it even further.
Yeah, I hadn't really focused on this issue, but it's a little bit tricky because, I mean, the statute is the statute, and we do, we deal with the hand we were dealt. But I don't think Shelley and I and Gary, for example, should be parties to a discussion at the intake phase of a potential matter, because we're not PAB members. But by the same token, we're recording all these sessions.
Yeah.
So if we have interest, we can go and look at the public website and see what was discussed. But I think that just prudentially, not because of the law, it makes sense to have some kind of division between the PAB and the ACC, because the way it's set up, the PAB makes a determination to forward something to the ACC, and the ACC shouldn't be a part of that. I don't think Shelley and I would vote on that anyway, but, it's artificial, but somehow we have to figure that out.
Yeah, I wanted to keep you in the loop on setting up the procedure, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not missing something pertaining to the ACC.
And I've
As
been
far as the
derelict. Gary
notification.
gave me the Queen Anne's County procedures for the ACC, which I have not updated as a potential draft for Kent County, and I'll do that right away.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Okay, for open discussion, myself and Pete went to the county commissioners meeting in January to discuss the year-end report from the Police Accountability Review Board. The commissioners wanted me to express their gratitude and thank you for all of us for stepping up and doing this and representing Kent County. We talked a little bit about the working relationship with the law enforcement, with the sheriff and local PD. And they were very supportive of this and very thankful that everybody's stepping up and doing this, putting out their time. Don't forget, move your clocks forward this weekend. Get an hour more of golfing or barbecuing, whatever it is. And that's all I have for open discussion. Anybody, Pete?
Yeah, and this will probably be the last time that I open my mouth on public discussion. I'll let Frank be the mouthpiece of the county from now on. But one of the things that I've noticed and I saw when the board voted to go to quarterly meetings, that there's too much that needs to be done. Charlie Mills got a lot done and got everything up and running, and I kept everything going. But everybody in their mind probably has questions or procedures that, Sev, you said, you're thinking about stuff. I honestly think that, I said before, I was keeping this room open every month. I truly believe that the Police Accountability Board, there will be, and there's enough stuff going on. I'm not talking about when there's an actual case churning. I'm talking about until we finish doing the job of having everything in motion, that the board should consider meeting once a month. I'm talking about the ACC all the time. There are certain things that board has to do. Our board has to, by law, include the police chiefs quarterly. We've moved to just having meetings quarterly. So essentially what happens is you never have a meeting without the police chiefs. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. We have amazing law enforcement. But there's police accountability business, and there's police accountability board business, and there's police accountability board business that involves law enforcement. And I'm not a meeting just for meeting's sake type of guy, but I really think everybody needs to consider. I actually offered to pay Frank out of my own money, unbeknownst to my wife, if he didn't get brought on board before today. I thought if he missed today, right now, we wouldn't see him until June. There's a statewide summit tomorrow that Frank and I and Chief Dixon are going to in Annapolis, so we'll be able to hear all the other stuff going on. But I honestly would like the board to consider keeping the monthly meeting. And the chances are that you could even have to meet more often than that with what, it's not enough time to get done what you need to get done. Now that we have Frank on board, I think we can hit the ground running. But right now, as it stands, Police Accountability Board is only meeting monthly, and theoretically, the Administrative Charging Committee is supposed to meet monthly or as needed. And the interpretation, the way it's been done here, is we've decided we're meeting quarterly, and we'll just invite the ACC when we need them. So I just think it's food for thought. I'm not a meeting guy. In all likelihood, I won't be at every meeting, but I want to ensure that you know I'm always going to be the liaison for the commissioners. I'll have daily contact with any one of you, or Val or Frank, but I think it's important to establish a fully transparent working machine before we get hit with the first trial board or the first full-blown complaint.
Okay, so,
That's my thoughts. And again,
no, I agree. I guess we did make it quarterly, and I don't, but we really haven't been meeting quarterly. We've been meeting pretty
well, we
regular.
keep trying to, again, that was me slipping meetings in
Right.
behind your back. But honestly, there are no structure guidelines as to how many meetings you have to make or mandatory attendance. We all have other jobs or other hobbies or other commitments. We aren't all going to always be able to be here every single month. We might go away or whatever. I think consider leaving this meeting standing and meeting, and it could be, Barry, you're not going to chair, you know, it could be, hey, we should consider nominating a vice chair, a co-chair, whatever. That way we can still be operational. But I don't want it to be panic mode if a case comes through and we're sitting here trying to still decide process or not having it refined. It's my only thought. I don't have a, you know, a stake in the game.
So I don't need to make any kind of motion to amend that quarterly thing, right? Correct? Because that wasn't a motion.
I
Was it?
believe there was a motion and it was seconded. We can check again. Actually, we have the minutes. I might be able to go back on. Or just make a new motion. You can do that if appropriate. Again, you might want to discuss it, or I don't see anybody with crossed arms or nodding their head no or rolling their eyes.
Let me make a motion for the purpose of discussion, and then we'll go from there. Make a motion, we meet the first Wednesday of every month going forward.
I'll second it.
First, discussion? Questions?
Well, I'll just say this, not that I'm opposed or anything like that. He did bring that up. I run an agency, other demands. I've been fortunate to come as often as I had to miss one because that was work-related. As long as there's that understanding, because I rarely miss meetings, but unfortunately, things come up, you know. Got legislature going on. I've been over there at Annapolis twice this week and all. So as long as we have that understanding, I have no problem with it.
Yeah. I think I'm sorry.
The issue that I have is that I teach a remote virtual class. It's a law class at night. In fact, my class starts at 4 o'clock, which means if we were running a little over time, I'd have to go. So that's the only issue is I may have some conflicts with courses and also with work issues, because we do have division meetings on Wednesdays. But as I said, I think it's something that I could juggle.
And my guess is until a complaint comes in, if we meet monthly and with Frank's help, we'll probably be able to speed through these pretty quickly. The main thing is for the next couple meetings, we're gonna have to work out some procedural stuff. And that's, you know, if we can talk ahead of time, present it at the meeting, discussion, we can get out a little bit quicker. I don't see any meetings really last long, but I do agree with Pete, we probably do need to meet more than quarterly. Maybe you just kept sneaking them in there, I just didn't know it was a motion. So,
I think one way around that too, Johnny, is to make sure that the agenda is out well in advance and it's not just boilerplate. For discussion purposes, it can have information that is going to be discussed. And that way you can judge with your commitments, yeah, yes, I should, no, I can't, I really like to, but I can't.
Right, that would be good. And I let my students know that I have a board meeting, but I'm not sure how long it's gonna go, but, so they're aware.
I've never known this board meeting to conflict with an hour-long commitment.
no.
Okay. I have one other thing.
We have a motion.
Yeah, we have a motion on the
Okay,
table. So let's call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. So the next meeting will be April 3rd.
It's just not April 1st.
Johnny, did you have,
Yeah, and I'll make it quick. As I said, I had to ready to start a class here in just a second. And just something to think about. I'm still perplexed. I raised this at the very beginning, and this is about the evidentiary standard of proof. And as I had told you before, I'm an ethics commissioner here in Chestertown. We've already had like 3 complaints because there's a very volatile issue. And there could be an issue with that, with me meeting a meeting in April, because there's some other issues that are generating. Anyway, to make a long story short, the standard of proof is clear and convincing evidence for a violation of an ethics accountability rule. The standard of proof for a police officer violating an ethics, standard of proof is a preponderance of the evidence for violation. And again, my question is, why are there 2 different standards? Why isn't the Maryland legislature being consistent? And I've talked with some police trainers across the bridge, and they didn't seem to have a problem with the preponderance of the evidence, standard, rather than a clear and convincing. It's just a higher standard. I know if I was a police officer, I was being charged with a violation, I would like to have that clear and convincing standard, which is a higher burden of proof. So public officials, the elected, appointed officials for an ethics complaint, they're held at a clear and convincing standard for a violation. Police officers, who are also public officials, they're being held under the Police Accountability Board with a preponderance of the evidence. And I have no problems, I just like to see consistency. Why isn't, if we're gonna hold public officials accountable for violations at a clear and convincing evidence standard, why aren't we doing that with the police officers? Then my next question is there some type of move within the legislature to get rid of qualified immunity? I'm assuming we still have qualified immunity in Maryland. I talked with some colleagues in other states. Colorado, they've abolished qualified immunity. I know a lot of officers or chiefs that I've talked with said that they're going to have a difficult time trying to hire police officers if we're going to abolish the qualified immunity. So I'm not sure if that's a move that Maryland may be headed toward, but my question is, why is there consistency with the standard of proof for appointed, elected public officials and police officers?
So,
They're being held
I
accountable.
mean, my take on this would be, this is something that would have to be addressed by
Yeah.
the state legislator, not really nothing that we can do about it. Maybe Pete and Frank tomorrow, when they go to their summit, might hear something on it and bring it
I
back.
mean, I can tell you it hasn't come up, and yes, qualified immunity is still here, whether it's in, on the chopping block or not, could be. Law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights are gone. But I think for this board to, you bring up great points, but for this board, we're dealing with what the legislature has handed us, and if there is a move afoot or there's a need to change legislation, it rests at their feet. I have no problem with the board considering we have a resident delegate. Inviting that delegate, I'm sure they would be hard pressed to show up during session, but having the delegate come and listen and at least offer it. I know when I was in Annapolis with my previous job, since this law, the Accountability Act's been rewritten, there have been modifications that have been drafted, discussed, and they never made it back out of committee. So to anyone at this table that thinks they can answer what's afoot, I don't think it's even an ability that any of us possess. But if you have that concern, where legislation is concerned, you should always contact your local legislators and let them know. Unless I'm way off base, there could be someone
you're good.
smarter than me in the room. I know Lamont, you're over there just
Yeah,
the same.
quite a bit. And I sit in on the Chiefs and the Sheriff's Legislative Committee also, representing corrections, and I haven't heard much of that come up in any of this session right now. It has not been addressed or any concerns expressed by the people that attend that meeting. And they're from all over the state, so, all right.
And I guess what our decisions, if it is adverse against a police officer, what effect would that have on a qualified immunity? But then, again, that's something that can be
So,
dealt with the
wait, you're
legislature.
not dealing with criminal law, you're dealing with administrative law. And that's, again, a civil question where, you're, like you said, you're dealing with beyond a reasonable doubt and preponderance of evidence. They don't make sense. Well, there's always that disparity in law as it's written. And I think that this board makes the decisions based on what the law allows them to, and at this time, it's a preponderance of the evidence. Whether qualified immunity or not, that's another civil case and a whole, civil proceedings. Part of that decision could be part of that case, but they're totally opposite, just as a criminal case. So you have a criminal, civil, and administrative all commingled with different standards. Didn't answer anything, did I?
No.
It can't be, it can't be
just-
answered the way the legislature's written.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to say.
Right.
I guess the only way is to look at what was the legislature's intent for coming up with these preponderance of the evidence standard. I mean, I like to see consistency, be consistent. So,
From a ruling standpoint, it makes it a lot easier, that's for sure.
All right, moving on. Anybody have any comments or announcements?
I just have a comment. As far as the Police Accountability Board goes and developing the procedures, it gives the board members a great opportunity to look at consistencies and what matters within Kent County and what you want that to look like at that level. And the legislature has been very unclear with some things, but that can be a plus for each of the counties because you can make it your own. And so I think keep that in mind.
All right. Anybody else? No? Our next meeting, like I said, is April 3rd, 3 p.m. Yeah, make a motion, we adjourn. Any seconds? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Any opposed?
No, nobody's opposed. Nobody's opposed.
You'll make a phone call for me.
I thought for sure, everybody hit the buttons, on the mics.
Yeah, I have.